Good afternoon and welcome to yet another special edition of Labor Matters right here on KBN TV. We're on channel 279 GSTV, 27 Go TV 102 Topstar and live on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV. I am your host Patricia Chilambikwens. Today we're looking at an interesting topic, which is conducting staff appraisals. So if you have any questions and comments about our topic of discussion for today, there's a number which is right on your TV screen, and please do use it to text us, no calls, but just text messages. And if you're wondering, or maybe you've just joined us, you're wondering what Labor Matters is all about, it is a KBN TV and Mr. Owen Kabanda's program, which comes to you every Sundays at 14 hours only on KBN TV. And if again you're still wondering who Mr. Kabanda is, he is an employment expert and a neuropsychologist, which is quite a unique combination. He has over 15 years experience in HR management and consultants. Mr. Kabanda, good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome back.
Thank you very
much. We suffered with the phone messages and calls, people asking where you are.
Thank you very much for welcoming me back, back on Labor Matters.
Welcome back.
Amazing. And Mr. Kabanda today is joined by Mr. Hilary Mulinga, who is a talent management expert with over 10 years of work experience in dynamic talent management practices. Mr. Mulinga, welcome to Labor Matters.
Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers. It's a pleasure being here. I'm so excited and looking forward to having an interactive conversation this afternoon.
Amazing. As Mr. Kabanda has just welcomed me back on Labor Matters, I'm glad to be back actually on this program, even though I was not here physically. I mean, I have been watching all the episodes that I have missed on Labor Matters, and I must make mention it was absolutely amazing. You did a good job.
Thank you.
And last week you did emphasize on the need for supervisors to monitor their staff and give them the support they need to work well and achieve the set targets. Now, Mr. Kabanda, as the employee is working sometimes mid-year or the end of the year, companies undertake performance appraisals. So maybe if you can let us start with you helping us understand what exactly performance appraisal is all about.
All right, so performance appraisals is really about the employer assessing the employee against the targets that could have been set at the very beginning of a particular period. Now, these assessments that we're talking about, or the appraisals, they do happen sometimes where you're looking at, for instance, at the end of the year. Sometimes these appraisals are also done at the end of an employee's probation period. So you have an employee starting work. When they work for 3 months, or at the time they reach 3 months, they are assessed to see if they can be confirmed or not. And sometimes the employee's probation is extended, so again they could be assessed at 6 months. The appraisals are also done at the time that the company wants to promote an employee. So this is where you find that the supervisor of an employee will be asked to do an appraisal on the person to see how they have been performing and behaving, and if they could be a good fit to take up a higher role in terms of what they could be in their are they employees who could actually be promoted. So really appraisals could be done in those different scenarios, and it's important that also they are done properly, and the supervisors and employees actually understand why the appraisals are being done, so that they are done in a manner that is professional and in a manner that benefits both the employee and the employer. We must make mention from the very beginning that the appraisals should not be used as a way to fix employees, because we see that sometimes the supervisor will even say, oh, okay, you are behaving like that, wait, the time will come. I'll fix you when appraisals come. So appraisals are not meant for fixing employees. Rather, they are meant to assist the company to understand how the employee is performing in relation to the set targets. And again, we've said in relation to set targets, this is in situations where the company actually and the employee, or the supervisor and the employee, agreed on targets at the beginning of a particular period. We must mention that sometimes those Targets are also sometimes not agreed upon at the beginning. These things happen sometimes where the employee starts to undertake a particular assignment, but they have not agreed per se, it's not in writing. We've seen this in many companies. A person, even during probation, they will just start, the supervisor will be giving work along the way. Sometimes even in the course of the year, the supervisor will be giving work, but they didn't sign something. But at the end of the period, let's say in December, they will be undertaking appraisals. So if it is in such circumstances, appraisals again should be used to fairly assess the employee's performance in relation to the targets or in relation to the works that were being assigned along the way. So the supervisor again should not just wake up and start dreaming about some works which they didn't communicate to the employee. So it's important that there is that clear understanding of why appraisals are being done.
Amazing. Appraisals should not be used to fix employees. Now, Mr. Mlinga, coming to you, why is it so important, or maybe why is staff performance appraisal important in any company, and why should it be done?
Thank you, Patricia. I would like to state from the beginning that performance appraisal is an integral part of the entire performance management system. Therefore, it becomes critical that institutions accord it the importance that it deserves. Your question focuses on the importance of having performance appraisal. It has a number of ways that would justify its importance and why it should be done. And first of all, I would like to encourage organizations out there, leaders and managers, to ensure that they effectively conduct performance appraisals in their institutions. Now, why is it important? Number one, we would say it provides a platform for managers to conduct constructive feedback to employees regarding their performance during the year under review. It brings out aspects to do with performance. It highlights weaknesses of employees. It also brings out issues that will ensure that we focus on to improve going forward. Now, I wish to state that there are a number of problems associated with this process. Most managers do not conduct appraisals or feedback effectively. Yeah. You would find that this manager just focuses on providing negative feedback. A poor manager, or rather a bad leader, will only arise when an employee does something wrong and remains silent when they do good. Yeah. That's not the best way to do feedback. And this process, performance appraisal, will highlight those things. And I must mention that leaders or managers need to master the art of conducting feedback to employees. And similarly, employees also need to know how to receive feedback. You just don't do it haphazardly, okay? As you conduct the appraisal and that feedback stage, it's important that, first of all, the employee is appreciated for the good that they've done before you move into highlighting their challenges and talking about things that you think they should focus on. So it's important in that regard. If feedback is done properly, we'll ensure that the institution and the staff in it will be up to date with everything that is going on. The second thing that I'll talk about is that it brings about goal alignment. Remember where we're coming from. We talked about the importance of aligning individual goals and institutional goals and how they cascade from the top to the bottom of employees. So this process will ensure that we identify, we note that the goals for employees and those of the organizations are in alignment. The third point I would raise is that it brings about motivation and recognition. It's at this stage where you will be able to tell and recognize top performers. And when you know that, you'll be able to boost morale. When you recognize and appreciate employees, you know that every human being has a craving for being appreciated. So this process provides that platform at which employees will be appreciated And when you're appreciated, it will boost your morale. Okay? The performance appraisal also highlights the training and development needs of employees. As you're having conversations with employees, you'll be able to tell the gaps that are there. You'll be able to tell where you are missing it or where you need to bridge up the gaps. Okay? So the process comes in very critical in ensuring that those gaps are identified and you proceed to make plans on how you're going to close them. The other point is that succession planning also comes in handy at this stage. Okay, so you'll be able to prepare future leaders through this process. For example, you have 10 employees under you. You'll be able to tell through the ranking process as you do the appraisal, you'll be able to tell who's the top performer, who's the middle performer, who's the lower performer, what do they need for them to be ready for tomorrow's roles. What do they need to be ready in for them to take up a role 2 years from now? So that process helps in that regard. The other thing is that it helps in decision making. Organizations run and make a lot of decisions. For example, you may need to make a decision on who to promote, for example, how to place your staff. Okay? That information will arise from this performance appraisal process. So basically, those are the things I would say it's important that this thing is conducted.
Well explained, Mr. Mlinga. Now, coming to you, Mr. Kabanda, what should be the frequency of some of the performance appraisals that Mr. Mlinga has just explained?
Yeah, in terms of frequency, what happens is that, first of all, the company should have a performance management policy. This is in line with Section 95 of the Employment Code. When you have a performance management policy, what then happens is that in that policy, the company then sets the frequency when the appraisals will be happening. This is why we encourage companies to invest in having all the necessary policies that are required by law, so that then they can also run properly, and also management and staff get to be trained so that they know what is expected of them. So in terms of the frequency, therefore, you can have some appraisals are done on a quarterly basis, that is after every 3 months. Other appraisals are done in 6 months, and other appraisals are done after 12 months, that is from January to December. So what happens, depending on what the company has decided and what you are linking the appraisals to, because you have to understand how the appraisals happen. You do an appraisal for the employee, it has an effect on, for instance, how they should start improving. It could also have an effect on their promotions or effect on their bonuses and things of that nature. So the frequency would affect certain things. That's why we are talking about having a policy which makes things to be also predictable for the employees and for the supervisor to know when exactly the appraisals will be done. So if in many institutions, especially big organizations, what you find is that they have the biannual appraisals. These are appraisals which are done in June after 6 months, and then you have the annual appraisals. Now the biannual appraisals, or the ones that are done in June, July, those appraisals usually are meant to help the employees and departments to align themselves in case there are certain things that were changing along the way before the end of the year. Then come the appraisals that are done in December at the end of the year. Those ones are meant now to look at the entire period, the entire financial year, where now the supervisor and the employee sits down and looks at how did we perform then from January to December, because the company now is closing its financial year and making plans for the following year. So the frequency really depends on what the company has decided. We also have to emphasize that even where you have such kind of policies that allow you to do biannual or annual appraisals, the frequency, it does not mean now the supervisor should walk away. We've been saying this over and over, even in the last episode when we talked about monitoring staff performance, that the supervisors should be closely working together with their staff, so that you are observing and you are helping the employees to change. You don't become an absent landlord. You just lock yourself up in that your office as a supervisor, and you're just saying, okay, I'll meet my staff at the appraisals in June or at the appraisals in December. It should never be like that. Supervisors should be regularly be checking how their employees are working. And again, we are not talking about micromanagement, and this we have to emphasize. There's a huge difference. I know in future we are going to have a session when we talk about micromanagement. We're not saying the supervisor now has to stand every day, standing over the shoulder of the employee, oh, because I have to manage you. That's not what we're talking about. We're basically talking about having a plan and along the way checking how the employees is working, appraising them even on a monthly basis, and they're giving feedback. The key issue is, can you give feedback along the way so that the employee can then be changing where they need to change, or they improve where they need to improve. And in that way, it becomes beneficial for the institution rather than simply sitting and relaxing and waiting for December to come and now do everything, whether being happy or to vent your anger now on the employee when now it is at the end of the year. That's not what we are focusing on. Appraisals should be timed properly with the right frequency and then done in a most appropriate manner.
Amazing. If you've just joined us, this is Labor Matters right here on KBN TV, and you can go on our Facebook page, drop us a comment if you have any questions about a topic of discussion for today. Now, Mr. Mlenga, coming to you, I know there is someone watching us right now. There is an employee saying, no, appraisals are stressful. I know right now there's someone thinking about appraisals being stressful and whatnot. Now, how should an employee prepare for a staff appraisal?
Thank you, Patricia. Good question. You see, this process and this stage of the process in particular is dreaded by most employees. I liken this process to a situation that happens in homes at times. You know, to people who are married, when a spouse tells you that we need to talk, it freaks you out.
Problems.
So this stage is like that stage where it's a we need to talk moment. Okay, so when you receive the we need to talk notice from your supervisor, what do? Personally, at some point, I used to freak out before I learned these techniques.
I mean, everyone would just freak out. I'd start asking myself, why is he calling me?
Exactly. Now, when I learned these techniques, I'll tell you that I can go in any conversation to do my performance conversation at any time. How should one prepare? First of all, you need to check. The first thing you need to do, first rush to your job description, even before you start preparing anything. Check what is in the job description. Is it in alignment with what you agreed? Check if did you record anywhere where you recorded your goals. Okay? So dash there, just check, because in that conversation, you will be discussing your job roles and that are contained in the job description. So when you do that you check the job description, you are satisfied, you are in line with what you agreed on. Then you can proceed to do your self-assessment. You check how you performed in a particular year. You have to be honest with yourself at that moment. Okay. Did you succeed at anything? Did you bring up any improvements in the process? Did you innovate anything? Did you live up to the values of your institution? So you need to check all those things. The next thing you need to do is to check how your KPIs will be measured, on what measures will be subjected to when you go to discuss. Are you going to talk about something that you have to provide evidence for, like were your actions bordering on writing a report? You check, do you have that report? Was it on providing certification? For example, you could have a goal to attend 4 trainings in a particular period. If you attended those courses, meaning that you will have 4 certificates, for example. If you do 8, even better, because you'll have exceeded your target. So you need to check that you'll be measured against those things. Are they quantities that you need to, are they sales that you need to, that will be measured against? So when you do that, then the third point that you need to do is the documentation part. You have to prepare the documentation. You prepare, if you have to photocopy certificates, make them copies. Do you need reports? Make reports. Because in that conversation, you may need to justify. Your supervisor may not recall all the assignments that were given to you, but it will be upon you to prove that you actually did those functions. So when you have that documentation, now you are almost ready to go in there. You need to move in with an open mind as you are going for that conversation. Don't be defensive. We have employees who go in with a versus mentality. It's the manager versus employee. You know, that will impede the whole process, and it will just lead you into other things. So you have to be there with an open mind, ready to receive feedback. And just prepare questions before you go in there. You need to have some questions. Discuss your future. What's the plan, my growth? How do I proceed from here? What's at stake for me? What's available for me from moving from this stage to this stage? So when you do all those things, your let's talk moment will be a very, very light process, and you move in and have your conversation.
Well explained, Mr. Mlinga, the let's talk.
Let's talk.
Now, coming to you, Mr. Kabanda, as a management expert, I would also want to find out how should supervisors also prepare for staff appraisals. You did make mention that preparation in an organization is vital. So maybe take us through on how even supervisors should prepare for staff appraisals.
Definitely, preparation cannot be overemphasized. And again, for supervisors, this business of you know, you're going for lunch at, if your lunch is 13 hours, it's 12:55, then you're telling the employee, hey, I think when we are back from lunch, let's do appraisals. That's what we are saying. You should not be doing that. The reason we are saying these things is that preparation is key. When the employee is being requested to come into the appraisal meeting, the employee requires enough time to prepare themselves. But that also means the supervisor, it's not like you are now, you know, yes, because I'm the one now who's going to give the marks, so I don't need to prepare. No. When employers, and in this case when I say employers, I mean supervisors, managers, all those who have been given the responsibility to manage others, if they walk into an appraisal meeting with a mentality that they don't have to prepare, whatever they are going to give is what stands, then that is wrong, because it then creates an atmosphere where there is no fairness, there is now issues of favoritism, and it's about what the supervisor simply thinks at that particular moment. So once again, we have to emphasize, prepare for the appraisals. Now, what does preparation mean in this particular case? The supervisor needs to look at what were the targets that were set in a particular period. So for this year, what were the things that we needed to achieve as a department, and this person, what did the person need to basically achieve? Now remember, what I did talk about the fact that in some companies, the targets are set at the beginning and they're signed for, but we are also aware that in some other companies, they don't set targets, it's as we go along the way. So then if you are in that space where you also didn't sign targets with the employee, as a supervisor, you now need to ask yourself, what assignments did I actually give this employee along the way? What were the major projects? What were the major things that this person needed to deliver? What were the timelines? So as a supervisor, it's also a lot of work. You have to genuinely sit down and look at what is it that this employee I expected them to do. Then you start now looking at what did this person do versus what I expected them to do, or the things that we signed up for. Remember, I'm talking about these two things because we have a lot of complaints from companies where people have not signed their targets. So it's important that the supervisor then collects the information. You're now looking at data collection. How has this employee performed, so that when the employee comes into the meeting for this appraisal, it will be a professional discussion, it will be an objective discussion. this issue of I feel like, no, I feel like, no, you see, who cares about your feelings? It should not be about I feel like, it should be based on facts. Look, we had agreed in the first quarter that you're going to do this. We gave you the resources, you needed to do this, and you didn't do it. It is as simple as that. Was it done or it was not done? It should not be I feel. I have to emphasize that aspect, because that is what now brings a lot of problems where, you can't fight with feelings. If someone feels happy, that's what they feel like. But then you make it difficult for the employee to also buy into what you're saying. It should be, oh, my friend, you are supposed to have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Along the way, you only did 3 things. So 3 out of 5, what is the percentage? It's as simple as that. You are expected to do this and this and that. So supervisors, what we are emphasizing is they should sit down, prepare, and gather also all the necessary information. It should not be speculative. It should not be based on just feelings. They should prepare and then set a date when the appraisals will be done. Once the date is set, also the venue where will the appraisal be done, all those things need to be planned for in advance, so that you also, as a supervisor, give the employee chance to also prepare the information that they need to bring to this meeting. Then also, the supervisor needs to understand what system are we using, all right? With the appraisal system, if you have not understood the appraisal form itself, go to your human resource department if you have one. Understand the tools you are going to use for that appraisal, because without understanding the tools for the appraisal, you end up now just giving marks, and sometimes deflated marks or inflated marks, because you have not understood the system. And it's embarrassing for the supervisor to be there with the employee, but this, I don't understand. Bwana, you're the supervisor, now you're asking the employee sitting across the table how the appraisal works. No, you should have known what you are doing way in advance. So understand the tools and the systems you're going to use for appraising the employee, and also communicate those things to the employee so that there is fairness in the appraisal process. Like we've said, appraisals are not meant for fixing. Then the appraiser, the supervisor in this case, needs to fully also understand why the appraisal is being done, because it's based on those appraisals that the certain decision, like it was said before, certain decisions are being made. So if it is an appraisal for confirmation, based on your appraisal, the person could be confirmed. If it's an appraisal for a promotion, based on your appraisal, a person can be promoted. But in this case, we are talking about, for instance, the annual appraisals. Those appraisals which are done in a year, they have an impact, like we've said. The person, those who are scoring lowly, maybe they will have to be going through the performance improvement plans. Others could end up being fired. They could also be those that are performing very well. They could end up receiving bonuses or incentives, and that is costing the company. So if the supervisor did not prepare well, they are just rushing through things. They are actually committing a company and making the company either to lose money through bonuses which shouldn't have been given, or through keeping employees who shouldn't have been kept, or being unfair to an employee because they are taking things casually. In the end, you rate an employee in a manner they shouldn't have been rated because you are taking things casually. So we have to overemphasize here. I mean, we can't overemphasize. Supervisors need to prepare and do the right thing when it comes to appraising the staff.
Amazing, well explained. After preparations, the date is set for appraisals. Now, Mr. Mlinga, where should staff appraisals be conducted? You did make mention sometimes it can be it can be physical between the supervisor and an employee. So, is there a conducive environment where the appraisals can be conducted?
Thank you, Patricia. You see, the location for conducting performance appraisals largely depends on the organizational culture, policies, and procedures in place. You could consider also the sensitivity of the conversation, the nature, or just the preference of the manager and the employee. may agree on where they would be comfortable to conduct the appraisal from. So there's no clear-cut direction where say it should be conducted from here. But maybe for certain reasons, organizations would have those things in place. But there are things to consider. First of all, the best place is where there's privacy. You have to ensure that the conversation or the appraisal is conducted in private. That will ensure that everyone is free and is able to communicate, air their views, and have a fruitful discussion without thinking of any other person that may be in there. So privacy is what I would say is key to consider. So it could be done from the supervisor's office. I've seen quite a lot of them being handled from the supervisor's office. They may agree to conduct it from the boardroom, from the conference room. Some can be done off-site. For example, we may have institutions where employees work from workshops, for example, or laboratories. So they may agree, say, for me to be effective, to respond favorably to this conversation, I would like to show you certain things that I've done from the lab or from the workshop. So they would say, well, let's have it from where I operate from. That is also fine if there will be no intrusions. And lately, we have seen conversations being done virtually. Through disruption, you can conduct a performance conversation without hampering the process or without postponing the process. Okay. The other thing that you need to consider after you have agreed on a place is to ensure that the place is comfortable. You don't want to be in a place that is very uncomfortable. It will just disturb the flow of the conversation. People will be in a rush. People's thought processes may be disturbed. Okay, so you have to ensure that you are in a comfortable place. The furniture is comfortable. There's well ventilated, for example. There are no hazards if you are moving to the lab or to any workshop. You have to ensure that there are no hazards in place, ensure that safety measures are put in place. You also have to ensure that at that moment, no one is disturbed, like mentally, or you have other stresses that may also affect how the conversation goes. So you may also need to agree. If there are those things present, you notice that I won't be comfortable here. This is not comfortable. It's actually so hot, the humid. The humidity also issues may need to consider them. And the other thing that is very key is the timing of the conversation. He mentioned about being rushed. You may not want to be in a situation where you call for a conversation just before knocking off. If you stay in Lusaka, knocking off time is rush hour. You operate from town, then your conversation, your supervisor gives you a notice, or maybe just comes and says we have a conversation at 16:45. It may not be fruitful. So there should be that consideration. The other thing is the safety. You talked about aggression. Depending on the conversation, there could be someone may start throwing punches here and there. So you need to ensure that you are safe. How do you do that? You may have other techniques. For example, you may alert the security department, maybe just to provide security outside the room without the employee knowing, or just as a normal security routines that they are just nearby. You can also alert a colleague, say I'm having this conversation, be alert. Because you can tell, I'm sure, that this person, this just conversation, just in case we go this route. So you may need to provide security. But what's very critical also is how the supervisor runs that conversation. You know, you may agitate another person by how you talk. So as a supervisor, you need to lead the conversation in terms of maintaining the cool demeanor. That's your responsibility. You have to channel the conversation with respect. Okay? You don't go there as a bully. Avoid such tendencies. You have to be a leader in that moment, and you have to be cool. You have to listen to the the other colleague. You know, when you conduct these appraisals, you don't conduct them frequently, as stated, like he gave some examples of the frequency. If you stay for so long, you do them once a year, like in Chwala ceremony, which is conducted once a year. That may pose a challenge and may lead to people start going back, tracking back to what happened 11, 10 months ago. So you have to ensure that you stick to those. You could do check-ins frequently. You have conversations. When you need to give feedback, give it immediately, so that you reduce on issues that may agitate the subordinate along the way. So I think with those, it would be good to have a conversation which is progressive and constructive.
Well explained, Mr. Mlinga. Now coming to you, Mr. Kabanda, as the neuropsychologist, maybe if you can take us through on some of the pitfalls that make appraisals to be poorly done. I don't know if I should say basically by the supervisors or the employees. If you can take us through.
Yeah, so it's just nice to hear when people start to be afraid of punches. Yeah, so in terms of pitfalls in appraisals, it's important to understand that supervisors and employees are human beings. We spent 7 years studying psychology, and one of the key themes was that human behavior is complex. And this is something that a lot of supervisors and HR people overlook, that they are dealing with a human being whose behavior is actually complex. You have different people behaving differently, but even the same person, today they will behave in a particular manner, tomorrow they will behave in a different manner. And it's therefore important that supervisors take these things into consideration. Now, when it comes to the time of doing appraisals, a lot of times, and this is why we emphasize on training, that supervisors need to undergo training, because there are a lot of biases that happen during appraisal time. He talked about the need to do follow-ups and engaging the employees along the way. What happens at the time of doing the appraisal at the end of a particular period? The human brain is very tricky. What happens is that you have biases like the halo effect, where one event that happened could actually influence the way the employee is being appraised or evaluated. So sometimes you find that along the way, this employee might not have been working very well, but just close to the end of this period, they do something which then excites you, and all of a sudden, the supervisor is giving very good marks. And those things, one event could actually make the person to evaluate the employee in a wrong way. Sometimes it's even just the very day of the appraisal. You find the appraisee, in this case the employee, walks in smiling, being very jovial, and the supervisor is taken. There is also what is called the recency effect. Now, this is where you're looking at the most recent thing. You have an employee, for instance, working for the past 10 months. They are just working very, very well. Then just in the last 2 months of the period, you find that something has happened and they are no longer performing very well. And because of the recency effect, the supervisor even forgets everything that was happening along the year, and they just now, because this is the most recent thing, that's the only thing they are remembering. And at the end of the day, the supervisor now gives bad marks to this employee because of this effect. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes you have an employee who has not been performing for the past so much period, and then just at the very end. And some employees are actually very clever. They know these things. They could know them, but sometimes it just happens. The guy knows, oh, we are now around the October, November. The guy starts to put in so much. By the time it's December, the supervisor, these are the guys. No, he performed very well, or she performed very well. So these kind of things, they are things that happen, and the supervisors might not even pay attention to those kind of things. We also have the anchoring biases or the effect. What happens also is that, apart from what would happen now, the most recent, sometimes it's the thing that happened a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So the mind of the supervisor is anchored on that issue. Something happened in February or January or March, and the supervisor's mind is just stuck on that issue. So if it was a good thing, well and good for the employee, but many times it's a bad thing. Something bad happened in that period, supervisor is moving with just, their mind is anchored there. So regardless of what the employee does along the way, the employee will be putting in so much, doing everything that they could do, but come the time of appraisal, the supervisor's mind is just anchored there. No, but you remember, these are things we even say when we do trainings for managers. Some of you call yourselves Christians. So why is your mind just stuck on a thing that happened in 1965? What is going on? These are things we emphasize. Mm-hmm. Supervisors need to be very objective. You look at something, even this is why we are talking about even frequent feedback. Mm-hmm. If something has happened at a particular time, change those things and help the employee to change. Sure. There are so many biases that if we are to start talking about the biases, we'll finish the whole day here. There are central tendency biases where if you have a bigger group of employees, for instance, you simply, remember in research you have the bell curve. Mm-hmm. Central tendency, everybody should be here. Around the 55, 60. So nobody should. So you want to bring everybody. Everybody should be here, mm-hmm. somewhere here. Sometimes there are biases around gender. People don't even realize how even your gender could affect the way you appraise. Because in certain cases, you find that you are the only man in a particular group with women, or you are the only woman in a group of men. So you tend to, we have very few women here, so I think we should support each other. Please, can you objectively look at what was agreed, and not now that you have to promote some people because of gender. There are even issues around just personal biases. There are things that we call like similar to me biases. Mm-hmm. If there is somebody who is similar to you, the supervisor even forgets how this person has been, and employees also capitalize on these biases. And they happen so unconsciously, you don't pay attention to them. Someone you go to church with, mm-hmm. the chap doesn't perform, and the employees even know these things. My boss is very religious. They'll be sending those Bible verses. The boss is very happy. Sometimes the guy knows that the boss likes dogs. That's what you are also discussing a lot with the boss. Or the boss likes cars or sports. So you start associating yourself as a supervisor to the employee, mm-hmm. and that starts to affect even the way the employee is appraised. And that is on the positive side. It also works against the others who don't associate with you. So there are a lot of biases, psychological biases that actually affect the appraisals, and that's why you find that in many cases employees will say these things are not objective, because these biases start to affect the way the actual appraisal will be undertaken, and in the process an employee will either be given poor marks, mm-hmm. or more marks because of these psychological biases.
Amazing. If you just joined us, you're watching Labor Matters, and we are looking at an interesting topic, which is conducting staff appraisal. Please do use the number to write on your TV screen and send us a text message. We'll read it right here, and Mr. Kabanda and Mr. Mlenga will respond to all the text messages. Mr. Mlenga, coming to you, during the staff appraisal activity itself, what should the two parties do to have a fruitful staff appraisal?
Thank you, Patricia, once again. You see, the responsibility of having a successful appraisal lies on both the manager and the employee. And they should be alive to the fact that their commitment to the process is one that will ensure that the process is successful. So there are quite a number of things that can be put in place or that should exist for the performance appraisal to be successful. Number one, there should be an understanding of goals from both parties. They should both be on the same page. You imagine you have a situation where you're going for an appraisal, then your supervisor has different understanding, or you have a different understanding on the goals and what was supposed to be achieved. That would be chaos. So there is need for both to have a mutual understanding of the goals that exist. Then open communication should also exist. There should be an understanding that that is an engagement and it should be treated as such. There's no one dominating the other in that process. So there should be that mutual respect and ensure that the environment is such that it's open for free communication to flow. Then there should be active listening from both parties. They should practice active listening. Listening is an art that needs to be developed by all supervisors and employees alike. In that process, we should allow each party to speak, to elaborate and highlight whatever they want to talk about. If you're not clear, it's allowed in that moment to ask for clarifications, paraphrasing of the statements and questions. Okay? So in that moment also, the self-assessment aspect should be provided for. The employee should be allowed to assess themselves. Before the conversation, you can actually give advance notice that they should assess themselves. It's shocking at times, you find there's an argument between the manager and the employee on the rating. The employee will rate themselves 5 and the supervisor will say, I'll give you 2. Or during the conversation, that's when they want to start discussing the rating. So there should be that allowance to the employee for them to assess themselves. Then the manager also should have time to evaluate. So there should be that provision to allow the manager to conduct a constructive evaluation of the employee. And for it to be successful also, there should be feedback process in the whole thing. There should be a provision for having a feedback session where each one will be free to give feedback to the other. And very critical also is that you have to document the process. All the conversations that will take place in there, whatever will be agreed upon, the trainings, the development plans of how you intend to develop someone to bridge up the gaps should be documented. Because it's that documentation that will work in future appraisals and to plan for the year that is coming.
Amazing.
So with those, I think it should be good to conduct the performance appraisal.
Now, coming to you, Mr. Kabanda, what are some of the results or maybe outcomes of a staff appraisal?
Yeah, so after the appraisals are done, like we said earlier on, you may have 2 or 3 things happening. One, if it's at the end of the year, the employees start to get rewards or recognition. This could be in form of bonuses, incentives, sometimes it's salary increments, depending again with how the policy was designed. Like we said, the company needs to have a clear performance policy. So that could be one result where employees get to have the rewards. The other point in terms of the outcome could be staff development. This is where you have now trainings and skills and knowledge that you are now recommending the employee to undertake. There could also be an outcome of performance improvement plans, that is for staff who are struggling and you think we still need to give them a bit of time to improve. The other result could be around even dismissals. If an employee is constantly underperforming at this point, you have the proof that you gave them the targets and they have failed to deliver. There's no need to continue having a person who cannot be trained or someone who cannot change. So at that point, you then have dismissals, summary dismissals coming in.
Amazing. Mr. Kabanda, we can clearly state or maybe say staff appraisal is not as easy as people might think, and supervisors need to be trained, as you had mentioned earlier, to do it properly. Maybe if you can also maybe give us an advice or maybe advise employees or maybe employers or maybe should we say supervisors on how to conduct appraisals and whatnot.
Yeah, really, the aspect of training can't really be overemphasized. Supervisors, and we know these are things that a lot of companies don't take seriously, but they have serious implications on the whole operation of the business. So supervisors need to undergo training. Like we have said, understand how, from what we started, we were talking about setting the targets, monitoring the staff, but also how to then conduct appraisals in a professional manner. Appraisals, like we have said, should not be used for fixing employees. Rather, they should be used to assess the way the employee has genuinely performed in relation to what the company expected from them. And in that way, you are then helping not only the employee, but also the company as a whole, because then you are seeing the performance gaps and ways to improve the performance of the staff. So supervisors being trained becomes very critical. Employees also being trained also becomes critical, because then they know what they need to be doing in terms of preparing themselves for the appraisals. So in the end, it becomes a win-win situation for employees and the institution as a whole.
Amazing. This has been an amazing conversation, and I hope our viewers have enjoyed this conversation. Maybe if you can read 2 text messages from our viewers. The first one reads, how long should be an employer be given a contract? Don't know if it's supposed to be an employee.
Yeah, so contracts are given based on the needs of the company. There are short-term contracts which go up to a maximum of 12 months. And then there are also long-term contracts which are over and above 12 months. So you're talking of there are 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and so on. There are also contracts that the permanent and pensionable ones that we know so much about, those are given, and the person will remain in employment until they reach the retirement age. So there are various contracts that are given, but the contracts given to employees is dependent on the needs, the operational needs of the business.
The second one reads, good afternoon, a nice discussion there. Staff appraisal starts with setting of targets. The moment it is missed at this stage, forget about successful appraisal. That's why SMART objectives are the most critical component of any successful appraisal. Both the employee and the supervisor should understand the specifications, how to measure objectives, objectivities, how to achieve are they realistic, and what is the time frame in which these objectives should attain. When these issues are attended to, you don't expect any problems.
That is very true, and it goes to speak to what we've been doing. In the first episode, when we started talking about performance management, we spent time talking about setting performance targets. First of all, planning for performance. So for our viewers who might have missed that episode, please go and watch the episode so that you understand when we started talking about planning. It was at that stage when you agree the targets that the employee should be working towards, so that then it comes and helps at the time of appraisal, like now we are talking about appraisals.
Maybe we can read the last one. Greetings, interesting topic. It is so informative. Apparently, the government under the Ministry of Health does more of these staff appraisals at district level with little or no feedback. Kindly asking if it's done only for promotion purpose or it is just a mandate of doing it annually. People have upgraded education-wise, but literally nothing comes up. So demotivating. Anonymous.
Yeah. Ministries. And again, this is why we talked about the purpose of the appraisals. The purpose needs to be very clear, both for the supervisor and the employee. And again, we talked, remember at the beginning of these sessions, when we talked about setting targets, the smart targets. Some companies and some institutions, we know that the appraisals end up focusing maybe more on qualitative things. And then what is the purpose of those things? So it's important that the institutions, whenever, and the HR practitioners, whenever they are undertaking these appraisals, they make it very clear to the employee what is the purpose and at what point do we do these appraisals. This is what we have been trying to talk about. Because when things are not clear for employees, it starts to create, you know, a lot of speculation, anxiety, and then people start to see that a certain group is being favored than the other group. So with this one, we can encourage the colleagues at the ministry to look into those cases and really see how they're running the institutions to make sure that the employees are well informed of what exactly is happening.
Amazing. Mr. Mlenga, if you can give us any last remarks.
Thank you. Amazing. It has been a pleasure, an amazing moment to be here this afternoon. My last words are that just to encourage employers and employees, and I'm aware that the year is wrapping up and most of them will go into performance appraisals. And just to also assure them that following those techniques that we've provided today on how to prepare for the we need to talk moment will come in handy before this year ends. I'll just encourage them and just say that we can continue the discussion on the social media platforms. We can meet on LinkedIn. I go by my name's Hilary Mulenga. Good afternoon, everyone.
Amazing. Mr. Kabanda, if you can also give us your last remarks as we get to conclude the program.
Really is to just encourage companies to focus on what we've been saying, create environments in which employees work very well, employees apply themselves, and supervisors do the right thing. Invest in training and gaining knowledge on how to manage staff, how to give feedback, and to support the staff so that at the end of the day, you as a supervisor, you get to succeed, the employees succeed, and the company succeeds as a whole. In terms of, for those who would want to follow these conversations, please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Using the same name, Owen Kabanda, just Google it, you'll be able to follow us.
Amazing. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming through on Labor Matters.
Thank you so much for having us.
There you have it to our viewers. That's all we had for this segment, and I hope you found this interview informative and interesting, because I had an amazing conversation after a long time. It's been a while, and I'm happy to be back. So next week we'll have an interesting conversation. Again, we're gonna be looking at dealing with the staff appraisal results and rewards. So please do make a date with us next week, same time, and on the same channel. And for those still with questions, please do use the number which is right on your TV screen. Feel free to send us those text messages, or maybe you can also go on our Facebook page and drop us a comment. Do not forget to follow KBN TV and these experts that have been giving you information to do with employee and employers. That's what Labor Matters is all about. Until next time, on KBN TV 279 DSTV, 27 Go TV 102 Topstar, and live on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV. I have been your host, Patricia Chilambiko. Goodbye.